On every journey, the young woman spends countless hours searching for old vehicles that have been forgotten by time. Some are badly damaged, while others have been abandoned for years in barns, scrapyards, or left sitting quietly in the corner of someone's property. To most people, these vehicles are nothing more than piles of rusty metal with no remaining value. But to her, every abandoned vehicle has its own story and deserves a second chance. Her work is much more than simply repairing old vehicles. She specializes in finding, purchasing, and restoring worn-out or abandoned vehicles. Once the restoration is complete, she sells them to people who are looking for reliable used vehicles at an affordable price. Thanks to her dedication, many machines that were destined for the scrapyard are given a new life and can continue serving their owners for many more years. Today begins just like many of her previous adventures. Early in the morning, she receives information about an old vehicle that a local owner is willing to sell. According to the owner, the vehicle has been sitting unused for a very long time. Although she has no idea what condition it is in, her years of experience encourage her to travel there and inspect it in person. After a long drive, she finally arrives at the location where the vehicle has been sitting. At first glance, it is obvious that time has left its mark. The paint has faded and peeled away in many places. Thick layers of dust cover the entire body, while patches of rust spread across many metal parts. The tires are completely flat, cobwebs hang from the doors, and the interior is filled with years of accumulated dirt and debris. Even though the vehicle looks extremely worn out, she carefully begins inspecting every important component. She examines the chassis to determine how badly it has been affected by rust. She also checks the suspension, axles, engine compartment, and many other mechanical parts to decide whether the vehicle is still worth restoring. This step is extremely important because it determines whether the time and money required for the project will be worthwhile. After completing her inspection, she realizes that the vehicle still has great potential. Although many parts will need to be repaired or replaced, the mainframe remains solid and structurally sound. The engine has not been started for many years, but fortunately, it does not appear to have suffered any major damage. Based on her experience, she believes that with enough patience and effort, the vehicle can be brought back to life. Once she has finished evaluating its condition, she begins discussing the price with the owner. Together, they carefully review the vehicle and negotiate a fair deal. The owner understands that the vehicle has been abandoned for years and will require significant time and money to restore. At the same time, she must carefully calculate her costs because purchasing the vehicle is only the beginning. She will also need to invest in replacement parts, repair materials, and many hours of skilled labor before the restoration is complete. The negotiation takes place in a friendly and relaxed atmosphere. After discussing the details for a while, both sides finally reach an agreement. In the end, she purchases the vehicle for $300. Considering that it has been abandoned for many years and is no longer useful to its previous owner, this is an extremely attractive price. For the seller, the deal is a satisfying outcome. Instead of allowing the vehicle to continue deteriorating, they receive some money from something they no longer use while freeing up valuable space on their property. They're also pleased knowing that the vehicle will have the opportunity to be restored instead of ending up as scrap. For the young woman, this is also a very successful purchase. Buying the vehicle at a reasonable price gives her enough room in the budget to invest in the restoration while still making the project financially worthwhile. More importantly, she sees potential where many others only see an abandoned wreck. After completing the purchase, the vehicle officially becomes hers. However, this is only the beginning of a long restoration journey. A great deal of work lies ahead, including cleaning the entire vehicle, disassembling every major component for inspection, repairing damaged parts, replacing worn-out components, and thoroughly checking the engine, transmission, braking system, and electrical system. The restoration will require patience, experience, and countless hours of hard work, yet these challenges are exactly what make the work so rewarding. Every restored vehicle is not only a successful business project, but also proof that dedication, skill, and determination can bring forgotten machines back to life. Will this abandoned vehicle drive again after sitting unused for so many years? Stay with us as we follow every step of the restoration process and witness its incredible transformation, from a neglected, rust-covered machine into a fully functional vehicle ready for a new owner. After reinstalling all of the wheels, the vehicle was finally able to roll again. However, this was only the first step in its restoration journey. Although it could now be moved, the engine was still completely inoperative after sitting unused for many years. Most of the mechanical systems would need to be thoroughly inspected and repaired before the vehicle could run under its own power. For that reason, her next task was to transport the vehicle back to her workshop, where the real restoration work could begin. This was not going to be an easy job. In its current condition, the vehicle was incapable of driving on its own. Attempting to start the engine on site would have been risky because the fuel system, electrical system, lubrication, and many other critical components had not yet been inspected. Starting the engine without first checking these systems could easily cause even more serious damage. To avoid unnecessary risks, she decided that the safest solution was to have the vehicle towed home. She contacted a local towing service and patiently waited for a tow truck to arrive. Because the area was far from the nearest town, it took quite some time for the driver to reach her location. Before long, the tow truck finally arrived. The driver carefully inspected the abandoned vehicle before preparing the towing equipment. Working together, they securely attached the tow cable to the vehicle's strongest towing points on the frame. Every step was carried out with great care, because even a small mistake could cause the cable to come loose or damage parts that had already weakened with age. Once everything was properly secured, the old vehicle began rolling for the first time in many years. Although it was still unable to move under its own power, seeing it move again was an exciting moment. It marked the true beginning of its journey back to life. The road ahead, however, would not be easy. This region is located deep in the mountains where the population is sparse and villages are scattered far apart. Most of the roads are unpaved dirt tracks or narrow trails that have been formed over many years of local use. Traveling through this area is challenging, especially for large vehicles. Even in good weather, towing an abandoned vehicle across these rough roads requires extreme caution. The tow truck cannot travel at high speed because it must keep the vehicle behind it stable at all times. Every sharp corner, steep hill, rocky section, and deep pothole must be crossed slowly to prevent accidents or further damage. The distance from the place where she bought the vehicle to her home workshop is also quite long. As a result, the journey will take much longer than a normal drive. The tow truck driver maintains a slow and steady pace, while she constantly watches the vehicle behind to make sure the tow cable remains secure and everything continues safely. Along the way, the old vehicle attracts plenty of attention from local residents. Many people stop and watch as the rusty, dust-covered vehicle slowly passes through the quiet mountain roads. Some probably wonder why anyone would spend money on such an old machine. But she sees something very different. Instead of a worthless pile of scrap metal, she sees the potential for another successful restoration project and the opportunity to give this forgotten vehicle a second life. Although the journey is slow, she never feels impatient. She understands that safety is far more important than speed. Her highest priority is getting the vehicle home without causing any additional damage. Only then can the restoration process truly begin. After several hours of traveling over rough mountain roads, the vehicle finally approaches her home workshop. The trip has taken a considerable amount of time, but everything has gone smoothly. This is an important milestone because from this point forward, the real restoration work can finally begin. In the next stage of the project, she will thoroughly clean the entire vehicle before carefully disassembling each major component for inspection. Every damaged part will be repaired or replaced, and each mechanical system will be restored step by step. Will this abandoned vehicle return to the road after spending so many years forgotten in the mountains? Stay tuned as we follow every stage of its incredible transformation from a neglected, rust-covered machine into a fully functional vehicle once again. After successfully transporting the vehicle home, the young woman could finally begin the restoration project she had been planning. However, before removing or repairing any components, there was one very important task that needed to be completed first: thoroughly cleaning the entire vehicle. Since the vehicle had been abandoned outdoors for many years, it was covered with thick layers of mud, dust, and grime. These deposits not only made the vehicle look old and neglected, but also hid many important details, making it difficult to inspect the true condition of its components. For this reason, cleaning the vehicle was the first and most essential step in the restoration process. To make the job faster and more effective, she used a high-pressure washer. This machine is a common tool in restoration workshops because it can easily remove years of dirt and mud in a short amount of time. As soon as she switched it on, a powerful stream of water blasted across the surface of the vehicle, washing away the thick layers of dirt that had accumulated over the years. She carefully moved the spray nozzle across every part of the vehicle. Starting from the front, she continued along the body, around the wheel wells, underneath the chassis, and finally into the cargo bed. Everywhere the powerful stream of water reached, mud and dust were instantly washed away, revealing the metal surfaces that had been hidden for so long. The pressure washer proved to be extremely effective, allowing her to clean the vehicle much faster than she could have by hand. After only a short time, the difference was remarkable. Most of the mud, dust, and grime had completely disappeared, making the vehicle look much cleaner than before. Although the rust and faded paint were still clearly visible, she could now inspect every part of the vehicle much more easily and accurately. This simple cleaning process laid the foundation for the restoration work ahead, marking the true beginning of the vehicle's transformation from an abandoned wreck into a machine with the potential to run once again. After giving the vehicle an initial wash, the young woman realized that a large amount of dirt and debris was still trapped inside the cabin. Without removing some of the interior components, it would be impossible to clean every corner properly. To make the job easier, she decided to remove the seats, giving herself better access to every part of the interior. Although the task was not particularly difficult, it required patience and care to avoid damaging the old components. After removing the mounting bolts, she carefully lifted each seat out of the vehicle. With the seats removed, the entire floor of the cabin was finally exposed, revealing years of accumulated dust, dried leaves, mud, and other debris. These were the areas that would have been almost impossible to clean if the seats had remained in place. One interesting feature of this vehicle is that it has only 2 front seats and no rear seats at all. This gives it a compact and unique design that is quite different from most vehicles. Even more unusual, it is a convertible with an open-top design, making it stand out even more. Despite being old and covered in dirt, the vehicle still has a distinctive appearance that immediately catches people's attention. The more I look at it, the more I feel that this is a very rare vehicle. Its design is unlike most of the common models we see today. From the front end to the body shape and the layout of the cabin, everything reflects the style of vehicles that were built many years ago. That is exactly what makes this restoration project even more exciting. However, at this point, I still have no idea which manufacturer built this vehicle or when it was produced. It may be a model that has been out of production for decades, or perhaps it was only sold in certain regions. If that is the case, once the restoration is complete, it could become far more valuable than an ordinary old vehicle. If any of you watching this video recognize this vehicle or know anything about its manufacturer, model name, or production year, please share your knowledge in the comments below. Your information would help not only me, but everyone watching the video learn more about this unique vehicle. Perhaps, together, we can uncover the fascinating history behind this forgotten machine that has been sitting abandoned for so many years. When restoring an old vehicle, there is one fundamental rule that almost every experienced mechanic follows without exception. Always inspect and restore the electrical system first. No matter how badly the vehicle has deteriorated or how many years it has been sitting abandoned, making sure the electrical system is functioning properly is always the first priority before moving on to any other repairs. The reason is quite simple. The electrical system is like the vehicle's nervous system. Nearly every major component depends on electricity, either to operate or to allow the mechanic to accurately diagnose its condition. Without electrical power, it becomes extremely difficult to determine which components are still functional, which have failed, and which need to be repaired or replaced. Understanding the importance of this step, the young woman begins focusing on the electrical system immediately after finishing the initial cleaning of the vehicle. Although this job requires patience and experience, she carefully follows the proper procedure instead of rushing to start the engine. Skipping important steps could easily lead to additional damage, something she always tries to avoid. The very first thing she does is prepare a fully charged battery. Since the vehicle has been abandoned for many years, the original battery is almost certainly beyond recovery. Rather than wasting time trying to revive it, she connects a replacement battery to temporarily supply electrical power to the vehicle. After positioning the battery, she carefully connects the positive and negative terminals. Every connection is made with great attention to detail to ensure the electrical system receives a stable power supply. While doing this, she also inspects the battery cables and electrical connectors for corrosion, loose connections, broken wires, or any other damage that may have developed over the years. Even a single poor connection can prevent the entire electrical system from working correctly. Once the battery is connected, electrical power finally returns to the vehicle for the first time in many years. This marks an important milestone in the restoration process. Although the engine is still unable to start, restoring power allows her to begin testing many other systems throughout the vehicle. She then methodically checks each electrical circuit one by one. The starting system, ignition system, fuse box, relays, switches, and wiring are all carefully inspected. Her goal is to make sure electricity can flow through every major circuit without interruption. If she discovers damaged wires, corroded connectors, or insulation that has deteriorated with age, she marks those areas for repair before moving on. This stage of the restoration often takes a considerable amount of time because vehicles that have been abandoned for years usually suffer from numerous electrical problems. Moisture, dust, corrosion, and even rodents can damage wiring and electrical connections. In some cases, a single broken wire is enough to disable an entire system. That is why patience and attention to detail are essential during this part of the project. After confirming that the battery is supplying stable power and that the main electrical circuits are functioning properly, she can finally begin diagnosing the vehicle's remaining problems. With power restored, many components can now respond during testing, making it much easier to identify additional mechanical or electrical faults. This is exactly why experienced mechanics always restore the electrical system before attempting to repair the engine or other major mechanical components. Connecting a battery is much more than simply providing electricity. It lays the foundation for every step that follows. Once the electrical system is operating correctly, troubleshooting becomes far more accurate and efficient, allowing the entire restoration process to move forward with confidence. For the young woman, however, this is only the beginning of a much longer journey. Many challenges still lie ahead, including inspecting the fuel system, ignition system, cooling system, lubrication system, and discovering exactly why the engine refuses to start after so many years. But with the electrical system now functioning properly, she has completed one of the most important stages of the restoration. Now that the vehicle finally has electrical power again, its journey back to life has truly begun. Will the engine start after years of silence, or will even bigger problems be waiting to be discovered? Stay tuned as we continue following every step of this remarkable restoration and watch this forgotten vehicle slowly return to the road once again. Writing. After completing the inspection and restoration of the electrical system, the young woman could finally move on to the next critical stage of the project, repairing the fuel system. This is an essential step that cannot be skipped if the engine is expected to run again after sitting abandoned for many years. Many people might assume that all you have to do is pour fresh fuel into the tank and try to start the engine. However, with a vehicle that has been left unused for such a long time, doing so could cause serious problems. Any old fuel remaining inside the tank may have deteriorated and become contaminated with water, dirt, rust, and other debris. If this contaminated fuel enters the fuel system, it can clog the fuel lines, block the fuel filter, or even damage the carburetor or other engine components. Based on her experience, she knows that if the vehicle is going to have any chance of starting successfully, the fuel tank must be completely cleaned first. Instead of rushing to pour fresh fuel into the tank, she decides to thoroughly clean the entire fuel tank before doing anything else. After opening the fuel tank, she carefully inspects its condition. Just as she expected, years of abandonment have left a large amount of dirt, sediment, and small patches of rust inside the tank. If these contaminants are not removed, they could immediately spread throughout the fuel system the first time the engine is started. She begins cleaning the fuel tank with great care. Every layer of dirt and sediment is removed, and the inside of the tank is washed repeatedly to make sure no rust particles or debris remain. Although this process takes a considerable amount of time, it is an important step that helps protect the engine and greatly improves the chances of a successful restoration. Once the fuel tank is completely clean, she finally pours fresh fuel into it. At this point, the electrical system has already been inspected, the battery is supplying stable power, and the fuel tank is ready for use. Everything is slowly coming together in preparation for the most exciting moment of the entire project, the first attempt to start the engine after years of silence. No one knows whether the engine will come to life immediately or whether more hidden problems are waiting to be discovered. However, every completed step brings the vehicle one step closer to running again. Will a clean fuel system and a properly functioning electrical system be enough to wake the engine after so many years of abandonment? Stay tuned as we continue following every stage of this remarkable restoration and discover whether this forgotten vehicle can finally return to the road once again. Writing. Bữa đây là bản dịch tiếng Anh tự nhiên, phù hợp với phong cách thuyết minh cho khán giả Mỹ. Just as I expected from the beginning, the vehicle still refused to start, even after restoring the electrical system and filling the fuel tank with fresh fuel. This is completely normal for a vehicle that has been sitting abandoned for many years. After such a long period of inactivity, many components inside the engine may have deteriorated or stopped functioning properly. So, the fact that the engine would not start immediately came as no surprise. Instead of repeatedly cranking the engine, she remained calm and began inspecting each critical system one by one to identify the real cause of the problem. Based on her experience, one of the first components that needed attention was the spark plug. The spark plug is responsible for producing the spark that ignites the air-fuel mixture inside the combustion chamber. If it is no longer working properly or cannot generate a strong spark, the engine will never start, even if both the electrical and fuel systems are functioning correctly. She carefully removed the spark plug from the engine for a thorough inspection. After years of sitting unused, it was covered with carbon deposits, dirt, and residue left behind from its previous operation. These deposits can weaken the spark or even prevent it altogether, making it one of the most common reasons why old abandoned vehicles fail to start after years of neglect. To solve the problem, she decided to clean the spark plug thoroughly. Using gasoline as a cleaning agent, she carefully removed the carbon buildup and every layer of dirt from the tip of the spark plug. Once it was clean, she dried it completely and inspected the electrodes to make sure they were still in good condition and capable of producing a strong, consistent spark. Although it is only a small component, the spark plug plays a vital role in bringing an engine back to life. However, cleaning the spark plug alone was not enough. For the engine to run properly, the fuel must also be delivered in the correct amount and mixed with air at the proper ratio. If the carburetor is clogged or contaminated, the combustion process will not work efficiently. Ignoring the carburetor during a restoration would be a major mistake. Without hesitation, she removed the carburetor from the engine for a complete inspection. This is one of the components most likely to become clogged after a vehicle has been left unused for years. Old gasoline gradually evaporates, leaving behind thick varnish and sticky deposits inside the fuel passages and tiny jets. Even a small blockage can restrict the fuel supply, making the engine extremely difficult or even impossible to start. After disassembling the carburetor, she carefully cleaned every individual component. Every passage, chamber, and small opening was thoroughly cleaned to remove years of accumulated deposits. The fuel jets, float chamber, and all the internal components were carefully inspected before being reassembled. Although this process required a great deal of patience and attention to detail, it was an essential step in ensuring the engine would eventually run smoothly and reliably. With both the spark plug and the carburetor completely cleaned, two of the most important systems involved in starting the engine had finally been restored. The electrical system was already functioning correctly, the fuel tank had been cleaned and filled with fresh fuel, the spark plug was once again capable of producing a strong spark, and the carburetor was now clean enough to deliver fuel properly. Everything finally seemed ready for another attempt to start the engine. This is the moment every vehicle restoration enthusiast looks forward to. After spending hours inspecting, cleaning, and repairing one component after another, would all that hard work finally be rewarded with the sound of the engine coming back to life after years of silence? Or was there still another hidden problem waiting to be discovered? There was only one way to find out. Stay tuned for the next part of the restoration as we discover whether this long-abandoned vehicle is finally ready to roar back to life, or whether the young woman will have to overcome even more challenges before it can return to the road once again. What an incredible moment. After all the hard work, patience, and dedication, the vehicle finally responded on the very first starting attempt. Hearing the engine come back to life was the perfect reward for all the time and effort the young woman had invested throughout the entire restoration process. This successful result once again demonstrates her skill and experience as a mechanic. By carefully following every step, from restoring the electrical system and cleaning the fuel tank to servicing the spark plug and rebuilding the carburetor, she systematically eliminated every obstacle preventing the engine from running. Her patience, attention to detail, and technical knowledge ultimately made this restoration a success. At the same time, this achievement also speaks volumes about the quality and durability of the vehicle itself. Even though it had been abandoned for many years and exposed to the elements, the engine remained in remarkably good condition. With proper cleaning, inspection, and maintenance, it was able to run once again. That is a true testament to the excellent engineering and solid construction of this vehicle. It proves that a well-built machine can continue serving for many years when it is properly cared for. This restoration journey has now come to an end. We hope you enjoyed following every step of the process, from discovering an abandoned vehicle to bringing its engine back to life. Every restoration project has its own unique challenges, and this one was no exception, making the final result even more satisfying. A huge thank you to all of you for joining